The Home Pros Radio Show.
Welcome to the Home Pros Radio Show podcast. I'm Tommy Donovan with RIC Home Inspections and your co-host for the Home Pros Radio Show. Throughout the month of October, we've been sharing with you those projects that should be on your to-do list as the leaves and the temperatures begin to drop. These projects are included in our Home Pros Radio Show Fall Preparation Checklist, which you can download for your own reference in the show description of this podcast. In part one of this series, we discussed items like checking for peeling paint around the exterior of your home, cleaning and repairing your deck, cleaning your fireplace and chimney, and addressing any cracks that have developed in your driveway or sidewalks. In this episode, we want to cover the rest of that list for you, as we did just recently on our broadcast.
This is the time of year to get outside. The weather's great. It's going to start cooling down, get our homes ready for the winter. We were talking about how we can go around and maybe seal some areas around our foundation to keep the pests from wanting to come in and set up shop during the cooler months. Some of the other things you could do, check the heating system, do a survey of your home's heating vents to make sure they're not blocked or covered by furniture, carpeting, or curtains. You got a buffet sitting on top of a supply duct or something like that, and it just really is not very conducive to good air movement throughout the home. Some other topics that we have in here that we were kind of getting at as we were teasing the show this week is we're talking about water heaters. Ready your water heaters. This is the time of year that we want to drain that water heater, get any debris, clearing out any debris that may have settled in the tank. If you got storm windows on the house, it's time to take those and put them up, maybe remove the screens once we get past that time of year that we're not going to be open the windows anymore. No need to have the screens up there. And then, of course, we want to make sure our heating and air systems are ready to go, and we are ready for the winter.
Of course, top of mind every fall is the task of cleaning out your gutters. But keeping your gutters free and clear of debris is not all that's required when maintaining your gutter system. Back in the spring, we spoke with Dave Ramsey with LeafGuard of South Carolina, who has some advice that can ensure that any concerns with your gutter system are washed away.
Well, tell us about what are some of the biggest things that folks need to know out there in regard to the gutter systems and just guidelines. Last week, for example, we were talking about, the typical lineage you want on your roof line per downspout and things like that. Or what are some of the things that we want to talk about?
Well, one of the things that we run across, other than people just completely not maintaining the gutters as often as they should, is when the original gutters are installed, a lot of times people try to push the limits as far as the length of gutter per downspout, because traditionally you're supposed to lower your gutter a half inch every 10 feet so you have adequate fall, so the drainage of the gutter is proper. But as you guys have been referencing this morning, mill houses, they settle, and sometimes we're fighting an uphill battle, if you will, with the water and the drainage.
Oh, yeah.
And
that's a good point.
You have to, and that, unfortunately, a lot of times we're exposing, either improper framing or over time settling of the house, just because the water's not going to flow uphill to where the downspouts were originally intended to go. So we always recommend a second downspout for a gutter that's over 30 feet long, just so it has proper drainage. Because a lot of times the spilling over not always is caused by a clogged gutter, but just improper installation and inadequate amount of downspouts. And that's one of the things. And for that matter, undersized, some of the really older houses still have the smaller 2x3 downspouts. And we typically now most everyone installs 3x4 downspouts, but every now and then we'll find some of the downspouts that have a restricted water flow because they're still utilizing a small downspout.
Well, that's one point. That's one point that
we upgrade them.
Yeah, I always like to make when I'm working with homeowners is you hear these companies that'll talk about, well, we have the biggest gutters, and upsize your gutters and you can collect all the water and you're going to be fine. But I always like to use this analogy. Shane could be sitting here with a 12-ounce cup, and I could be over on the other side of the table with a 40-ounce cup. But as long as our straws are the same size, we're going to be pulling the same amount of soda out of that cup. Same thing with gutters, right? So it doesn't matter really what
that's a perfect analogy, Tommy.
Yeah. So, I mean,
because a lot of these gutter contractors will try to tell you, put a 6-inch gutter, put a huge one up there, and you can catch more water. Well, it's not getting water to go in the gutter that's usually the challenge. It's getting it out as fast as it's coming in.
Yeah.
And that's where you go with the larger downspouts and more of them. I just think if you put a 6-inch gutter up there, a big monster one, that you're going to end up having more stuff to clean out if you have a traditional gutter.
Because it's catching more, which means you're going to have more debris.
Exactly.
And, well, that's the advantage of having something like your product, Leaf Guard. And one other thing I wanted to touch on, there are times when I'll see a house like with roof we were talking about roof valleys earlier and how it's important to flash them because that's where you get a collection of water's coming together and running off your roof. If you have a valley like that, when you're hanging your gutters, we're talking about the slope of the gutters. In valleys is where we want our gutters to be hanging the highest on our fascia boards and sloping them away. Sometimes folks I see are thinking the opposite. Well, I want my downspout right there so I can get it off the roof. But actually, that's reverse of what we typically want to see. Isn't that correct?
You're spot on.
Yeah.
And some people want to put a downspout in the corner, like you were saying, which means you have to have that lower. And the farther you are away from the valley, the more chance of the gutter shooting or the water shooting over top of the gutter because you're farther away from the roof. So, like you said, we try to make our inside corners or valley areas as high as we can and draw the water away from that.
Yeah.
And, the main thing that we find is over the years, and you've been referring to flashing, is a drip edge right at the roof line.
Between the shingles and your gutters.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the water is actually making a good transition from the roof to the gutter because that, honestly, where we find rotten wood, most roofers, when you run into rotten wood along your eaves, they want to typically blame the gutters that are leaking. Mm-hmm. And they're backing up in there. Where in reality, we found where shingles are really short or, the old 3-tab shingles. Most people are going to architectural now, but the old 3-tabs, if you do not have a starter shingle underneath there and you don't have it staggered, because we found where the starter shingle ends and they put a 3-tab shingle right on top of it, the same lineup, every 3 feet you have a 5-inch gap in between the shingles so they don't cover up the transition between the two.
And that moisture gets down into the fascia board. The fascia board rots.
It never gets to the gutter. It falls out behind the gutter.
Exactly, Shane.
And then you start seeing the nails pulling out of the gutters, and then it's like, well, you got rotted wood there on the fascia board,
and the gutters
so then it leads to the next.
Right? The gutters not leveled right. So what's the roofer doing? Well, it's your gutters, man.
Yeah, everybody's pointing the finger.
Exactly right.
Yeah,
I've met with so many roofers when we've had them blame us, and I'll say, look, Mrs. Jones, I'll meet with your roofer, and I'll come out here and I'll explain to them, and then, every time I meet with them, they acknowledge the fact that the water's not even making it to the gutter.
Great conversation that we shared back in the spring with Dave Ramsey from Leaf Guard of South Carolina, a topic that is just as relevant now here in the fall. For more help on making sure your gutters are doing their job, contact Dave Ramsey with Leaf Guard of South Carolina. You can find him online at upstateleafguard.com or call his office directly at 864-990-0990. One topic that is not on our Home Pros Radio Show fall preparation checklist, but is certainly related, is backup power solutions for your home. Winter storms can bring snow and ice that can leave homeowners without power for weeks at a time. Here, Scott Kelly with Carolina Generator tells us that when this happens, he has a solution that will keep your home from being left out in the cold.
One of the things that I learned, Scott, is backup power generation for homes. They're becoming more and more popular. Why is that, would you say?
Generac, which is the brand that we offer, have done a lot of studies for that very same topic, and they've come to find out only about 3% of the homes have backup generators. And that number is growing simply because of the storms, ice storms. That's the biggest reason. As the upstate grows, get more traffic on the roads, we'll see power outages due to traffic accidents. The grid's also getting older. Generac recognized this also. They do have an infomercial out that goes into a lot of these topics. And the power grid's getting older.
Tell me, what homes are at the greatest risk? You're a little more remote. You're likely to be the last grid to be put back live. But is there anything that homeowners want to think about as far as determining whether or not their homes?
Just downtown Greenville, several years ago, there was an ice storm. Some of those people were out of power over a week. So anybody is susceptible to getting a power outage.
I would think probably if you're in a neighborhood that has overhead power lines as opposed to underground, one thing that you mentioned that I didn't even think about is traffic. All it takes is for an auto accident to take down a power pole, and you're out. Let's talk about the systems themselves. The power goes out. What happens? How do they operate?
Real simple. A home standby system is fully automatic. Within 30 seconds, power goes out, generator starts, transfer switch switches over, you have power on. It's just that simple. Some customers go the portable route. It's not something that we recommend simply because have a power outage, you got to pull that portable out, needs to be outside. We have a lot of customers that have had a portable and they just get tired of messing with that. They have enough experience with power outages, they want it automatic. That's primarily our business, is doing the home standby all the way up to large businesses.
The Generac systems that you install are automatic, that they will actually recognize a power outage and then kick in without you having to do anything.
That's correct. And that all happens within a window of about 30 seconds. When we do with healthcare facilities, that generator has to be up and running and switched over in 10 seconds. A little different setup, but that's how quick that those work.
With these systems, how do they work? So normally you have your electrical panel. With the Generac systems, you have a box or a panel that can identify when the power outage occurs, so it knows to switch over.
Yes, that happens immediately. When the system sees a power outage, it goes ahead and starts the generator, and then it will prove itself in just seconds that it's up and running, producing power, and then it switches over to generator power.
And then at that point, it feeds whatever circuits you decide are the most important, right?
Yeah, you can do the whole house. Typically, you have to have a generator big enough to back up any load that's connected to it. The exception in the electrical code is you can shed loads, which means that maybe you got 2 heating and air units, and you only can afford or want to invest in a generator that would do one. Mm-hmm. But it's possible if one's running, the other one could come on, but they just not enough power to bring them both on at the same time. So we can do the load shed option. That's one way to get a little smaller generator. And then if you still on our budget, maybe you just want some lights, refrigerators, sump pump, garage doors, some smaller loads, we can put in a panel that does essential circuits.
Okay.
So there's a lot of options there. When our consultant comes out and does a survey of your home, that is discussed. Generac has given us software to help size the generator for the home.
You're working from the main panel and the home's individual circuits, so there's not really a whole lot of tear out, or sometimes you retrofit homes with certain plumbing fixtures and things like that, and you've got a lot more going on. But this is fairly simple, in other words.
Yeah, we don't have to go in and remodel the house to put these in.
Yeah, that's good.
It's pretty easy.
That makes it simple. What is the maintenance schedule on a system like that?
What we found, especially during this last storm, since there was hundreds of thousands of people without power, and a good number of them had generators, all of a sudden they decided, my generator don't work. They haven't had it serviced in years.
That's a bad time to figure it out.
That really defeats the purpose, doesn't it?
Yes. So the battery is a crucial point of it. So we suggest at least once a year, our maintenance can do a 1-year visit or a 2-year visit. When we do a yearly visit, we'll change the oil, change spark plugs, air filters, oil filter.
Balance the tires. Yeah. Check the alignment.
So we do all the maintenance that the manufacturer requires. But the biggest thing is just being sure it works, the transfer switch works. And we also have a monitoring system which works off cell phone technology. We have about 500 customers currently that has that. With that product, as soon as the generator faults out, we know it. We get in text messages and emails, and we respond accordingly to that. We typically to a customer's home within an hour of them calling in an outage. We were inundated with calls this last storm. Some of them had to wait 2 or 3 hours. But I was really just thrown back how many people have these boxes on the side of their house just sitting there. And it's out of sight, out of mind until the power goes out.
We talk about that all the time, don't we, Shane?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And one thing I'm wondering is, do your generators kick on? Do they cycle offline, or do they ever, are they typically set up to do that?
Yeah, the home standby has an exercise program, is what it's called. And they can exercise once a week is typical. Some of them go longer. Comes on, runs about 10 minutes. That helps lubricate the engine. You just know if it did that at least you know that part works. Home generators typically will not transfer that over, so the transfer switch really never gets tested until we come out and do a maintenance.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Now, you mentioned checking the battery on it. We're not talking about battery being the actual fuel that supplies power at this moment when the system does come on and you need that backup power. We're talking about almost like a car engine. This is what I was joking about before. We have a certain amount of battery power needed, but actually what actually fuels the system that keeps it going?
Yeah, all generators have to have a fuel source. Typically for a home setup, it's either natural gas or propane.
Okay.
We do have the option of diesel. A diesel engine, diesel setup's going to be a little more expensive, but some customers don't want to deal with propane and don't have natural gas, so that is an option.
To learn more about backup power solutions for your home, visit Carolina Generator online at carolinagenerators.net. You can also reach Scott Kelly and his staff on the phone toll-free at 800-261-0359. That wraps things up with our Home Pros Radio Show Fall Preparation Podcast Series. Again, you can download our checklist in our show description. There, you will also find the online links for Leaf Guard of South Carolina and Carolina Generators, who I'm sure will be more than happy to help you prepare for the chill of winter. Thank you for joining us for the Home Pros Radio Show podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so you can keep up with all of the helpful advice, tips, and tricks that we share with you each week. Also, please take a moment to leave us a review so we can hear your opinion on how we're doing. I'm Tommy Donovan with RIC Home Inspections and your co-host for the Home Pros Radio Show.
Thanks for listening to the Home Pros Radio Show. Meet more Home Pros at homeprosradio.com. There, you can also catch full episodes of our show along with additional information to ensure that your home is in perfect shape. It's the Home Pros Radio Show, brought to you by Prime Lending, home loans made simple. The Home Pros Radio Show, online at homeprosradio.com or on the radio at 94.5 WGTK, The Answer.